Well, the first thing that parties have to do is to appoint an accounting officer who will take accountability and responsibility for ensuring that the financial records of the party are in order. And secondly, they have to appoint a publicly registered auditor or an auditing company that will, at the end of the financial year, do an extensive audit of the books of the party. The resultant audit report then has to be submitted to the IEC at the end of the financial year. We will use that information to compile a composite report, which will then be tabled with the National Assembly in Parliament.
Yeah. Then, of course, there is the issue of restrictions, Mr. Mamabolo, restrictions on sources of funding for political parties. Talk to us about where these parties are not allowed to receive funding from.
Well, the most obvious is the proceeds of crime and donations from state-owned enterprises, SOEs. Those would be Telkom, Eskom, SAA, and those type of institutions. Thirdly, donations may not be received from foreign governments or entities of foreign governments unless they are intended for training and policy development. And even so, there's a threshold of 5 million rands.
It's very interesting. Government departments and state-owned entities. Why would political parties have received funding from these institutions of government anyway?
Well, in a modern state, one would expect that not to be the case. But you know, in a situation that is free of a regulatory regime, anything is possible. And without saying that, in fact, there have been such donations before, but that is within the bounds of possibility.
Which party would have benefited most from these two institutions that I've mentioned, government departments and state-owned entities?
To the extent that there was no requirement to disclose funding by any party before the 1st of April, certainly I don't have that information. I really do not know.
Yeah, gosh. And then let's talk about what happens if a party does not disclose, does not make the necessary disclosures. Are there monitoring mechanisms for you to pick up where a particular party would have received funding, particularly from a source it's not allowed to receive funding from?
Well, there are a number of remedial provisions that are embedded in the Act. One, the Commission can issue directions to force the party to disclose. And if there are repeated failure to disclose, then there are two avenues available to the Commission. One is to approach the Electoral Court on application, and the court can then mete out certain administrative fines, which range to about R1 million. So there are very serious penalties that the court can impose. And secondly, certain transgressions to certain provisions of the Act create criminal offences. So a criminal complaint may be laid by the Commission and then investigated by the South African Police Service, and upon conviction, a person may be sentenced to a period of up to 5 years in jail. Now, our monitoring mechanism it's an example of partnership with the audit industry. The auditor who's appointed has to check all the bank accounts, has to check the financial statements in conjunction with the bank accounts, and make it a finding whether that party has run its account in line with the provisions of the Act, and where there have been aberrations, then to report those accordingly. Once we receive that audit report with an indication of aberration, then we may decide to do a number of things, either issue a direction, institute an investigation, or approach the Electoral Court for appropriate remedy.
All right, a final question, and very briefly, if you can, for me, Mr. Mamabolo. The COCTA minister was in Parliament, if I understand it correctly, yesterday, talking about the issue of the elections. Has a date been set for local government elections yet?
Thanks, God. In fact, we were before the COCTA Portfolio Committee last night, and the Deputy Minister of COCTA gave a report to the effect that the consultation process has not been concluded at the moment. And as soon as that consultation process is concluded, probably the Minister will make an announcement on when the date would be.
All right. Sai Mamabolo, thank you very much for your time, sir. He is